it's Sandra. Welcome to another episode of Asexualise, my asexual life. This is a place to be education about asexuality, all things asexual, and I share my own asexual life journey in order to help you in yours. If you haven't already subscribed, please hit the great big subscribe button below right here, right now. Please hit that bell icon to get notified of every time I go live right now or post a new video. And don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you find the content helpful, enjoyable, insightful, entertaining, or just want to give this channel some light love at all. The thumbs up really do help raise awareness of asexuality, and I so appreciate them. So in a few moments we'll be discussing what it feels like for sex-repulsed asexual, me, to write about sex. For example, my Asexual Guide to Sex book. So yes, if you didn't know who I am Sandra Bellamy, author of this beautiful book, Asexual Perspectives, 47 Asexual Stories, Love, Life, Sex, a celebration of asexual diversity, which is a good introduction to asexuality all across the spectrum. It really shows you what asexuality is and how it all works, rather than just give you textbook definitions of it. And I'm also the author of this beautiful fibromyalgia self-help handbook, How to Manage Fibromyalgia to Have Less Pain, More Energy, and Feel Happier Like a Superhero Rock Star. And a lot of the techniques that are used in this book to create more energy and happiness within a person's life who's got fibromyalgia are easily transferable to someone without fibro. The majority can be used by someone without the condition, and it can help to overcome depression and decrease your anxiety and have much more energy and happiness in your life. So check out the links to those at the end of this video. So right now I want to crack on with what it's like for a sex-repulsed asexual to write an asexual book. So if you didn't already know, I am Sandra Bellamy. I'm the author of, like I showed, of Asexual Perspectives. That was my first book out for asexuals. I'm currently writing book 2, which is called Asexual Guide to Sex, which obviously is quite ironic because if you didn't already know, asexuality is a sexual orientation that's the lack of sexual attraction. There's about 1% of the population that is asexual, which is thousands and thousands of us, although not that many people are out to the world like I am about being asexual. So what does that really mean? So it means that in essence, I don't get the need, urge, or want for partnered sexual intercourse. I'm attracted to guys romantically, aesthetically, and in lots of other ways. And I desire, in my case, because I'm romantic asexual, I desire to kiss a guy, but I have no sexual feelings of wanting to have sex towards him whatsoever. You know, I never have that need, that urge, that want. I never see a guy and think I want to have sex with you, no matter how much I may love the guy. If he's my boyfriend, it doesn't compute in my head. I don't feel those feelings. I don't ever remember ever feeling that. You know, I look back at my life, even when I was at school, and I used to like the romance. I used to think about holding the guy's hand and kissing him. I never thought about sex. It just didn't enter my head. It was something that wasn't a part of my makeup or a part of my life or a part of what I thought about. It just wasn't. And so some people might be thinking, why am I writing an asexual guide to sex? Because although I don't want sex, I've had it in the past. I was in heterosexual relationships for half of my life. And obviously, as someone didn't know they were asexual and in sexual relationships, there was times when that was really difficult for me. Because, you know, I don't naturally want sex. It's not something that comes naturally to me. It's something I look for in a relationship, something I think should be part of a relationship. I've never associated sex with love in my life whatsoever. I've never thought they're the same thing, even though most people in the world tend to pair them together. My life's never been like that. So I've never looked at a person and thought, I love you and I want sex with you. It's just never computed in my mind. So the times that I did have sex in the past were largely due to the fact that my exes wanted it. And in the last long-term committed relationship I was in for 8.5 years, that ex was good. You know, he did things like kiss me quite a lot in the lead up. I know for him it was the lead up to sex, but I loved the kissing. I did enjoy some touching by him. I did find that nice if he did it in the way that I asked him to do it. And the last long-term guy I was with, he wasn't very nice to me. He was quite abusive in a lot of ways, but not sexually. And for some reason, which I'm glad, because I'm glad it was nice in this way, he was a completely different person when he was doing sexual things with me. So it was like, in those moments, I saw the person I originally fell in love with, not the person he'd actually become outside of those times. And I know that can sound really, really weird, and it does sound very odd to me, but that's the way it was, you know. And I'm glad that he didn't hurt me sexually. I'm glad he was the opposite. He put my needs before his own, but he knew cleverly that by giving me what I needed, he was more likely to get what he wanted, which was sex. Because, you know, how many people really want to give someone sex if they're made to feel like they should be doing it and that their needs are not met? You know, he was good in that way. He was good at sex. So that's how I know the difference between good and bad sex, between the guys who just wanted to stick their dick in me, basically, and the guy that I was with a long term who wanted to please me. You know, he would always be touching me more, kissing me more than I would usually be doing to him. Obviously he got the reward of sex some of the time he didn't. But that's what it led up to, you know, a lot of the time for him. But sometimes when we weren't having sex, we would just like things like mutual masturbation, that type of thing. So looking back in my past life, because I was in heterosexual relationships from a very early age. I mean, my first boyfriend was at 6 years old, but I started to have more sort of official boyfriends, as it were, I guess. I mean, the boyfriend at 6 was, you know, my boyfriend. Was kind of secret, but I started to have more official, open, you know, like open to the world relationships. People knew about it when I was a teenager, you know, and so I have a lot of experience in terms of sex compared to a lot of asexuals who have a lot of the time haven't experienced any sexual intercourse whatsoever. Some of them may have done some touching, but not the intercourse or other things. And so I came across someone, and they said to me, well, it was a friend actually. They said to me that, well, first of all, I've come across forum posts, I should say, where I've seen people say, asexuals say that, you know, that they, you know, they have had sex or they're thinking about having sex, but they don't know what to do with their hands and arms. I think they said they tried sex before, but they didn't know what to do with their hands and arms. They find it very difficult, and so they didn't really understand it. And then I had a friend who is a really lovely friend, and it didn't occur to me that they would ever ask me this question, because they're an aromantic asexual, or aromantic as lots of people pronounce them, meaning, you know, they don't experience any romantic attraction or sexual attraction. They popped a message in my inbox, because we're friends, on Facebook saying, Sandra, if I wanted to try sex, what would I need to do? And it never occurred to me that another asexual might want to try sex, because sex is not something that I think about usually having. Obviously, I think about talking about it to help people on this channel, but it's not something I go around every day thinking about having at all, because I don't think that way. And so I, you know, was kind of hit with a lightning bolt. I'm like, not literally, but figuratively speaking, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's some people who are asexual that want to try sex. That's weird. And obviously, if they're posting in a private message to me, there must be other asexuals who feel the same way, but they're afraid of saying it, because, you know, if you're an asexual who doesn't like sex, or you know, then you know, you don't like sex. But there's some asexuals that are indifferent towards sex. There's some asexuals who don't mind giving it a go. There's some asexuals who not bothered one way or the other if they have it or not. And I think as an asexual community, there's a lot of people that are frowned upon who are asexual, wanting to try it or thinking about trying it, or actually actively participating in it as we speak. And so I you know, thought, well, there's got to be some scope there for writing a book, because obviously my friend asked me, and I saw in the forums that people didn't know what to do with their hands and arms and legs, and obviously I have that experience, but I thought there's probably some other asexuals that have had sex that have had different experiences to me, you know. And that's when I started, basically in 2017, thinking I should do 2 books, one about how to have sex if you're a beginner for asexuals, and one about asexual sex stories. Now, it wasn't until last year I decided to actually combine both of those ideas into one book. And in June last year, I requested that people who wanted to be in my Asexual Guide to Sex book, who'd had sex before, to come forward and share their personal stories about how sex was for them, you know, when they first lost their virginity, how it felt, what type of things you had to do to prepare for sex, you know, in terms of mindset, physicality, emotions, all this type of thing. And some people requested, you know, like a questionnaire from me, which is basically how people get started with their stories. They have a list of questions, but then once I get their answers in, we then work together to, you know, to ensure that their story, their personal stories, interweaving in those questions, so that asexuals can get their questions answered about what if they want to try sex for the first time, what should they do in various different things. They can get their questions met, as well as hearing an asexual's or different asexuals' personal stories. So that's how I've done it. And you know, there's been times when I've had to work quite a lot with some of the asexuals on their stories, especially the ones that give much more in-depth help, advice and guidance, which is in the latter part of the book. So you know, the book is called Asexual Guide to Sex, and it's asexual sex stories, sex advice, sex help, and sex guidance. And I really am excited for this book, you know, and even though it's kind of weird and asexual writing about sex, I know there's a call for it and a need for it, because I've also had people in private message, you know, people, for example, from India, women who have been having arranged marriages, and or parents are about to arrange a marriage for them, and they're scared because they're asexual and they know that sex is going to be expected of them in a traditional arranged marriage where the guy's heterosexual, for example. And so they're like, Sandra, you know, like they message me and say, Sandra, you know, like what should I do if I have sex? I don't know what I'm doing. I've never thought about that because I'm asexual. And so you can see how this bigger picture went of what made me decide to create the book in the first place, because what people were saying on forums, what my friend was asking me, you know, what if I wanted to try sex, and what these people were saying in private message about, you know, they're scared and they don't know what the heck they're doing. They've never had sex. They don't think about it because they're asexual, but they're going to be having arranged marriage to a heterosexual, basically. And so there's a certain amount of distress there, you know, and whilst I appreciate there's lots of sex-repulsed asexuals, there are also some asexuals that do want to try sex, or that are thinking about possibly doing it. And I felt there's no book like it on the market that caters specifically for asexuals, because we do think differently in regards to sex. We do have to kind of like, you know, kind of like think differently our minds about sex. We naturally do, and in order to actually do the deed, as it were, we have to be thinking kind of differently, because we don't get that innate need, that urge, that want. It doesn't come naturally to us. So this book is designed to help those asexuals that are thinking about trying it from the first time and are struggling with to come to terms with the fact that they think they really would like to try it, but they don't know what to do. They don't know how to go about it, and it's very scary to them. So they don't want books from dating coaches that are to do with heterosexuals, because do you know what I mean? They can hear that all the time. Other heterosexuals, heterosexuals, not asexuals. Heterosexuals don't understand really how asexuals work, how our mind works, how we feel about things, and as a consequence how our body reacts. They don't really think about stuff like that. So all the books are out there are written by heterosexuals, usually the majority of them, you know, or at least bisexuals. They're usually sexperts, psychiatrists, psychologists, dating coaches. They're all geared predominantly towards heterosexual relationships, or indeed sexual relationships. There's no books on the market specifically for asexuals. I mean, obviously my asexual perspectives book is the closest thing. Obviously you can check that out down below, because that does give a little bit of insight into what it's like for an asexual to have sex and be in a relationship with sexual, because some people in the book who are asexual are in relationships with people who are sexual. But there's no book really to help you, and so this is why I decided to create this Asexual Guide to Sex book. Now, although I've had sex in the past, I am personally sex repulsed for me these days. It's something that I just don't like, I just don't want, I just don't need again. I don't feel comfortable about doing that. I don't feel good about it. I don't want to do it. It's not something I think about doing. It's something I think about not doing and think about, could I ever push myself to do that again? No, I couldn't. And that type of thing, you know? And so for me, it's kind of hard, right? It's okay to a certain extent because I talk about sex quite a bit on this channel to educate other asexuals. I talk about the fact I don't like it. It's disgusting. It's horrible, personally for me. And you know, so I can talk about it quite matter of fact, right? But you know, writing a book that's specifically about sex for asexuals is quite hard as a sex repulsed asexual. Sometimes, you know, I was doing really well. I even managed to talk about, you know, how I used to think about oral sex when I did it on the video that I did yesterday. But today's been very difficult. I've been working on Alice's story. I don't want to show you it all because it's, you know, and Alice's story is probably the most hardest to read if you are a sex repulsed asexual, right? It's very good. The ending, you know, how it ends is very, you know, very you know, good advice at the end. And you know, there's got to be different stories of contrast, and there is. And when I read Alison's story, Alice's not, I sound like I'm saying Alison. When I read Alice's story back and I'm ship shaping it up for the book today, you know, just the final little bits of grammar and stuff. But Alice, you know, Alice has written it very colloquially, so there's some slang in there. It's written in her very own tone of voice, you know. It's not done with perfect grammar. It's done as if you were speaking to her in a conversation, basically. And you know, personally for me, this has been the most hardest story to actually read myself and take all the information in. You know, because it's the you know, the person Alice is a very different type of person to me and different experience, you know. And so when I read the story, you know, today, and I was shaping it up for the book, the final little bits of editing, as it were, you know, I just thought, this is why I absolutely hate sex, and it's so disgusting to me. And it just made me want to puke, to be honest. It's just horrible. And so, you know, the book is not a glorification of sex. It's not to sensationalize sex. It's to literally give the good, bad, and the ugly about sex. You know, and so Alice's story is one of the more uglier ones, if you like. A lot of the others are, you know, aren't to that extent. And so, but you know, there's some good things that have come out of that experience for her personally, and that's why it's important to have it in the book. You know, like, we all learned things through our experience, whether good or bad, and it's very important that we as asexuals can learn from other asexuals in the book. It helps to prevent us going through so much painful experiences ourselves. It helps us to keep safer because we know what could happen or might happen. It helps us to prepare ourselves. It helps us to see how we are different to sexuals, and that it's okay to be us, you know, it's all right, you know. And being able to read someone else's personal story and know that you're kind of safe reading it, you know, you're reading it yourself, you're safe behind the page, as it were, is something that's very valuable, you know. I want the book to help a lot of asexuals. I want them to be able to think, you know, I want them to be able to see the different sides of it, the good, the bad, and the ugly side of sex, you know, because there's some asexuals in the book that don't have a problem with having sex, you know, whereas there's other asexuals that do. So the Asexual Guide to Sex is a very, very insightful experience. It's just I found it quite hardcore today, you know. Doing that particular story, it's been quite hardcore. It's the most hardest one out of the whole lot for me personally. You know, as a sex repulsed asexual, because it is, some of it's really hard. Like I said the other day in a video, I don't really have a problem about doing a sex scene in a book, but I've never actually written a proper like fiction book. I did a book years ago that did have some sexual stuff in it, but I never finished the book because I decided fiction is not my thing. I prefer to do non-fiction and change people's lives. I think non-fiction books change people's lives, whereas fiction, I don't. Fiction can make people feel certain things, but I don't think it has the huge impact that non-fiction books does. That's why non-fiction is my thing, you know? So, I mean, another story that I was working on yesterday is absolutely fantastic. It's a very, very good story, which was Adriana's, I think it is. Yeah. Let me just look down my thing. Yeah, Adriana's. So Adriana's story is really, really good. Really, really, really good. I think loads of asexuals will be able to relate to that story, and they give very good advice about what to do physically. You know, when you're having or preparing for sex. So that Adriana's story is awesome. So there's different contrasting stories in the book. You know, and I really believe that it's the right thing for me to do. I really believe it will help a lot of asexuals, you know, and I'm hoping that people who are asexual that have partners that aren't asexual, I'm hoping those partners will read the book, you know, so they'll really understand how we're so different to sexuals, how we think and we feel, and hopefully they can make more adjustments for us, you know, so that if they do have sex or do anything sexual with us, you know, it's coming from a place of more consideration, more empathy, more being able to understand us better, you know. I really think it's important, because people just don't understand asexuality a lot. I mean, I connected recently with a new entrepreneur, and he's a really nice person, singer actually, amongst other things, a motivational speaker, and he literally you know, was sending me some personal voice messages. It's really nice. He's very aesthetic, beautiful, I have to say. And he was saying, and I told him about asexuality, which he obviously didn't read my profile and know about. And he goes, "Oh, you have to be careful telling people like that. You know, people, I'm okay to tell, but you have to be careful what people you tell, because, you know, you're going to get people like who don't like it because you're challenging their ideology and their norm. But if that's the way you like to be, then fine." And you know what I mean? People don't understand asexuality. They think it's something like we've chosen to be, and that we're just wearing the hat for now, and that people should just like it or lump it. That's not how asexuality is. Asexuality is a genuine sexual orientation that's a lack of sexual attraction. You know, I can't drum this in people's brains enough. Like, just like someone's heterosexual, sexually attracted to the opposite gender, for example, then, or sex, then you know, asexuality is real. We're not sexually attracted to anyone, you know, and it's not some hat we're wearing, it's not something we're trying to be, it's not some phase we're going through, it's not something we've just picked out like a trophy. It's a real genuine sexual orientation, and asexuals do really struggle. It's hard living in a sexualized world where we're not like that, we don't think like that, we don't feel like that, you know. I mean, like I said, if I talk to an asexual about sex, it's okay usually. But if I talk to a sexual about sex, it feels disgusting, because I know they're kind of panting away wanting the sex, and I'm not interested in that. You know, and writing Alice's story today was really hard for me. You know, it reminded me how disgusted I feel about sex and how horrible it is, you know? But then obviously, like I said, there's different stories in the book which will probably make you feel entirely different about the whole thing. There's some asexuals in the book that don't have that, you know, that don't mind having sex, you know? So it's very, very interesting how all the stories completely contrast and are different. And I'm so glad that it's not just me that's written my story, it's all the asexuals, you know, all the wonderful stories in the book. That's what makes the book, really, even more than my own story, to be honest with you. I just think they're so incredible. And I've worked actually more on other people's stories than my own so far. You know, I've been working like some asexuals over 6 months on the Asexual Guide to Sex book. So, you know, it's incredible that people who are asexual have given up their time, energy, and effort to email backwards and forwards, to make sure their stories as best as it can be, in book form, so people can read it, understand it, and kind of understand their point of view and how sex is for an asexual. You know, I can't you know, express my thanks enough to them. But, you know, as a sex-repulsed asexual writing about sex, sometimes I'm okay about it because I'm not repulsed for other people, just myself. And other times there's certain things in the book and it's just too sexual and it feels like too disgusting and feels like sickening, you know? That doesn't mean to say people who are sex repulsed shouldn't read the book. You should just be warned that obviously there are some stories in the book that, you know, depending on how sex repulsed you are, that you will find difficult to read, because I do, and I'm the author of the Asexual Guide to Sex book. You know, even I find like one or two stories difficult to read, particularly the one today. It's quite horrendous. You know, it's very. I think not even just asexuals. I think some sexuals will be a bit shocked by it as well. But you know what I mean? It's important that that person tells their story and gets it out, because I don't want to just write a book which completely glorifies sex or makes people think that sex is completely safe or everything, you know, about it's fine when it's not, you know? Asexuals get absolutely fed up of sex being glorified and sensationalized and, you know, put all over the media and everywhere. Say, oh, it's a wonderful thing, everything's great, everything's fine, everything should be sex, 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 when it really, really shouldn't. It should only be sex, 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 sex. If a person wants sex, 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 sex. If a person doesn't want, like, or need sex, it shouldn't be about that, you know? And that's why I think it's important that all the different types of stories are in the Asexual Guide to Sex book, so an asexual can literally make an informed choice and decision where they want to go ahead and try sexual acts or even sexual intercourse. You know, I think asexuals shouldn't try it until they've read the book. Then they can get all kind of different sides of the equation, and then you can actually learn from people's experiences, real life experiences, so you can not make the same mistakes that other people have made, not make the same kind of like situations happen, you know, and not hopefully get yourself into situations that aren't good for you, you know. I think everyone in the book has learnt something from that actual experience. You know, one of the questions I ask, you know, towards the end of the book, let me see, towards the story for every person in the book, yeah, if you were to look back at your life, what advice would you have given to a younger version of yourself in regard to having sex? So that's a similar question in my Asexual Perspectives book. You know, I think it was in regard to having asexuality. So my Asexual Perspectives book in here, there was a question. Let me see if I can find one for you. Yeah, if you were to look back at your life, what advice would you have given a younger version of yourself in regard to asexuality? This was actually Martin's answer from the Asexual Perspectives book, which is my first book for asexuals. Going back to when I started secondary school, the advice I'd give would be that I'm actually asexual, and to look up the orientation, but maybe not to be open about it, since I wasn't as confident back then as I am now. This way I'll be less confused about myself and more confident about who I actually am. So yeah, that was Martin's. He sometimes watches this channel, so he's happy for everyone to know he's in the book. So, you know, and what advice, another one in the Asexual Perspectives book, Eddie's story. If you were to look back at your life, what advice would you have given a younger version of yourself in regard to asexuality? Was Google asexuality, kiddo. So, you know, that was just like a really short bit of advice, you know. Marnie's story, you know, what advice would you have given to others who are just discovering about asexuality and considering where they're not or are or not? No matter what, just be yourself. Those who love you will love you no matter what, and those who waver don't matter. Do not fear your true self. Staying true to you makes you happier and attracts more happiness, and that's absolutely true. So and they were saying, when I asked them the question, if you were to look back at your life, what advice would you have given a younger version of self in regard to asexuality? It is okay to be who you are. Never let anyone else determine your value or sexual orientation. Don't lose sight of your true self. People will love you anyway. So that's very important. So you can see that there's a similar question in my Asexual Perspectives book, and this question in my new book. is, if you were to look back at your life, what advice would you have given a younger version of yourself in regard to having sex? So that is one of the questions I've asked all the asexuals in my Asexual Guide to Sex book. So every time that you read someone's personal sex story in the Asexual Guide to Sex book, which is coming out, should be out this year, hopefully June. I'm hoping to get the ebook out if I can finish my bit in the time and finish all the stories. I'm working my way through the stories. They're really gonna, hopefully all be done soon, other people's stories, and I can get on and finish my own. But everyone who's told their personal stories has some advice to give a younger version of themselves, and it's kind of like a lot of the time reflecting on what's happened in their life and what they learned from it. So you can learn the lessons that they've learned about sex in regard to their asexuality, their sexual orientation that is asexuality, and that can help you in your own asexual life journey. So I think it's really important that when the book comes out, Asexual Guide to Sex, that you do grab yourself a copy of it. I think it'd be very, very insightful, especially if you're thinking of any way, shape, or form doing any sexual acts or any sexual activity or intercourse. I think it's really, really important. I just want to let you know that if you're a sex-repulsed asexual, you are going to probably need to kind of like chill out for a bit with certain stories, because obviously as a sex-repulsed asexual, it can be quite like full on because it's talking about sex. So even though I'm the author, I still have to have, like today, I did quite a bit of editing, like just the final bits of editing with this story. I've printed it off now and I've got to read it again later. But my first read through on the computer, my first read through, but I haven't done for a while because I haven't read through it for a while till today. That was quite hard. I've forgotten what the story finer details were. I can remember some of it, but not all of it. And so I've worked really hard to put this into a format for the book now. And, I've just got to go through it again, but it's quite hardcore. So, it just reminds me of how disgusted I am with sex, how much I hate it, how much I don't want to do it, and how much I really, if I get into a relationship ever, I need it to be with an asexual guy, someone who's going to kiss me, cuddle me, hold my hand, hold me tight in his arms, and never want sex with me in his life. That's the type of guy I need. I can't be doing with sex. I don't like it. I am sex repulsed from me these days, even though I've had it in the past. I can't see me ever having it again in my life. I can't see me wanting to have it again in my life. Can't see a need for it in my life. It's just like ugh to me. So but there's different stories, like I said in the book, so not all the stories are negative towards sex. Some turn out really in favor of it's okay to do that. So if you want to, it's always if you want to. Throughout the whole book, Asexual Guide to Sex, it's always you shouldn't do anything you don't want to do. Only do things you want to try and are happy and comfortable with. So I have to let you know that. Anyway, that's my take on being an asexuality author of a book about about sex and being sex repulsed. It's hard sometimes, but I have to keep persisting. And also, I do find it difficult because obviously I've thought about writing books for sexuals. I kind of started 2 books, particularly one for sexual guys, just done the first kind of couple of pages, I think it is, last year. But when I read stories, these Asexual Guide to Sex stories, and I am asexual, makes me think twice about writing stuff for sexuals, because it's just like I kind of don't want to help sexuals in the sense that they got enough help, but I think they've got the wrong type of help. I think they've got the type of help where it's just saying have sex, have sex, have sex, and they haven't got an actual outside person like me who's asexual looking in saying, hey, this is wrong, this is like, because they go for the wrong thing. Sexuals, if they want sex, they should be having it with people who really do want sex as well, not people who don't, and they shouldn't assume anything, and they shouldn't feel entitled. There shouldn't be this entitlement. And that's what I can bring to the table as well. If guys and girls want more sex and they're sexual, they should be pursuing people who want that too. It's the biggest mistake they make. Absolutely biggest mistake they make. So I think that needs to be addressed. And so it kind of makes me think, do I even want to do anything for sexuals, to do with sex? Because if I write a book, obviously it's going to be geared towards them getting more sex, but I'm going to make it clear there are people who are asexual in the world that don't actually want sex. And so therefore don't just assume that the person you're meeting or dating or chatting with online is going to be the same as you. And I don't think there's any book for sexuals out there like that, because what asexual really writes a book for asexuals? what asexual writes a book for sexuals, a non-fiction book? I know, you know, there can be you know, fiction books, but I don't think there's any non-fiction books. So, you know, I'll probably be the first to do that. And if it breaks ground and gets more sexuals to take notice of asexuality and take it seriously, then I think it's going to be worth doing. But I don't know how I'm going to get on with it now, because I've just been reading this story, which is my own Asexual Guide to Sex book, and it just makes me like really disgusted about sex, hate it, not want to do it ever again, really feel sick about the whole idea. So like the idea of actually doing like anything for sexuals, because I was going to do my erogenicity brand, which isn't just to do with sexuals, it's like being erogenously generous with a partner. You don't even have to do sex, you know, like I'm erogenously generous but with the upper part of the body, you know what I mean? I don't need to do anything with a guy's genitals or from the waist down. Like, you know, you can be sensual and erogenous with all the upper part of the body, such as, you know, the lips is one of the most erogenous zones ever, you know, like behind, you know, like the earlobe, the neck, that type of thing. So there's loads of erogenous zones that don't have to lead to sex whatsoever, and you can just like make your partner feel tingly and special and excited in those areas, do you know what I mean, if you so want to. So that's kind of like my idea of erogenicity, and also it's about being erogenously generous with your partner is also about having open communication, because, you know, erogenous stuff is to do with the senses: lick, smell, touch, hear, sight, do you know what I mean? And so hearing kind of sweet words and, you know, like talking is kind of erogenous in and of itself, especially for someone, for example, who gets attracted to intellect, you know. So there's a lot I can teach sexuals, because sexuals don't even think this way, do you know what I mean? They just think about sticking it in, which is why a lot of them are just failing miserably, you know. So I think I still can add to it, but it's just like, I just like, when I'm writing this book now, I'm just thinking, God, I don't even want to really think about that so much for sexuals, because it's like, you know what I mean, I'm quite disgusted by sex, and I don't, you know, it's like encouraging sexuals to have sex, but I guess if I'm encouraging them to have sex with the right people that actually want it, and trying to like discourage them from assuming that every person who they come across wants sex with them back, and also assuming they're entitled to it, you know, this sense of entitlement they've got. I think if I'm discouraging that and saying, hey, get with someone who's really compatible for you, instead of like getting mismatches all the time because you're assuming too much and being too entitled, I think maybe that will help. I guess it can't make things any worse, can it, really, in that sense? But obviously it's a bit weird for an asexual to be writing books for sexuals as well as asexuals. But then I think it's the only way I'm really going to get asexuality recognised more as a sexual orientation throughout the globe, so that no asexual has to live in fear of ridicule ever again, because sexuals need to understand the term asexuality. They need to take it seriously. You know, it needs to be the norm for them. It needs to be like, oh, right, okay, some people are asexual. Yeah, of course, I knew that already. Do you know what I mean? That's what needs to be the norm. And I don't see how we're going to get through to to sexuals about asexuality else. You know what I mean? But at the moment, I'm just feeling kind of blur about the whole thing. Like, ugh, do I really want to be doing anything for sexuals? Ugh, because I love asexuality. I love asexuals. I love being part of this asexual community. I love, you know, like the fact I've got amazing asexual friends. My best asexual friend I'm seeing tomorrow morning. I cannot wait. I'm so excited to see them. They are a true blessing to me and a joy to know, and I get on so well with them. They live like 200 miles pretty much away from me, but they are such a lovely person, beautiful soul. We really get on so well. Like when I'm around them, it's just like, you know, being at home, you know, you know, like if I go to the cinema with them, for example, I just feel like so comfortable in their company. When I eat out with them, it's just so relaxing. They're just so lovely to be around. You know, when you've got those type of people, that they're quite rare. That person's very special best friend to me, you know, very special best friend. I can't wait to see them because I haven't seen them for ages. I'm so looking forward to it. Anyway, I'm going to love you and leave you for now. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. I really, really, really appreciate you being here. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that bell icon to get notified of every time I go live like now or post a new video. And yeah, I'll see you on the next video or live stream. If you're interested in the Asexual Perspectives book, the link is down below in the description if you want to grab yourself a copy of that. And also my fibro book's down below. Asexual Guide to Sex I'm still working on at the moment as we speak, but it will be out this year for definite. Anyway, take care. Thanks very much for watching. Lots of love to you. I'll see you soon. Embrace your quirky and each other's. Bye bye.